Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television and we're broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria. In the last couple of minutes, we've been reviewing the first quarter report of the economy together by the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And I've been having a conversation with the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Muda Yusuf. He's still here with me in the studio. Mr. Yusuf, thank you so much for sticking around.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's go back and focus on some other sectors or some other aspects of the economy that was looked at in that report and the microeconomic dimensions like it was tagged. Let's talk about the inflation rate now. The quarter under review actually saw the inflation rate stay within a single digit, where the Central Bank of Nigeria has, as much as possible, tried in terms of policies and all the rest to make sure it stays at. But organized private sector seems unimpressed by this.
Yes, you see, some of these indicators are not ends in themselves, because in economic management, the whole purpose of policy is to achieve some objectives. It could be objectives of welfare, it could be objectives of development, it could be objectives of enhancing productivity. It is good to have low inflation. It is good to have stable exchange rates, which the CBN has been struggling with. But again, what do we need at this time? At this time, what we need more is how to get businesses to work, how to stimulate growth, how to create jobs. This is what is paramount at this time. Now, you could have low inflation because many businesses are not so active. Because if you don't have sufficient activity in an economy, you could find a situation where you have low inflation. And we have been able to achieve this because we have been operating in a very tight monetary policy regime. So access to credit has been very difficult. So what we have in the economic space are those who are taking advantage of the economy because they have access to some cheap funds. Some of these players are indigenous players. Many of them are actually foreign investors. Because for some of them, they come in with funds of maybe 2%. Some come in with funds of 0% from their home countries. Some come with funds. Most of them, the funds they come in with to this economy are single-digit funds. Whereas the domestic players, particularly the small businesses, have to access credit 25%, some even access at 30%. For those of them that cannot access the commercial banks, they go to microfinance banks, where they access funds at as high as 70%, sometimes even up to 100%, because they charge you per month.
That's the microfinance bank, which is supposed to be the ones to provide this finance to the small businesses.
Yes, they charge you per month. So you have low inflation, yes, but at what cost? Because in the development process, in stimulating growth, it is allowed in economic management that you trade off some variables. If you want to stimulate growth, you must be able to tolerate some level of inflation.
But then you should understand, and I'm sure most private organizations too should understand, that the only reasons why these policies were put in place is just to stabilize the economy. And before these policies are actually put in place, they would have looked at all the variables at play and to see how much of it's going to impact all players.
No, you see, the monetary authorities have a narrow objective of policy. You see, the mandate of the CBN is monetary stability, monetary and price stability. The CBN is not so much concerned about growth or even job creation.
Not really.
No, I'm talking of their primary mandate is price stability. Occasionally, when Sanusi was there, he goes out of his way to put some funds, intervention funds, agri funds, manufacturing funds.
That is agreed by the CBN board.
Yes, that is just secondary. But their primary mandate, which they often say and which Sanusi often emphasized, was that it is to ensure price stability. But you see, in economic management, you have to be holistic in your approach. If you have a situation where you have the kind of unemployment that you have, you should begin to worry about creating jobs. You cannot create jobs if you continue to tighten monetary policy. If you continue to have very high interest rates, you can't create jobs. It's not easy. You need to talk to investors in the real sector. They will tell you the kind of pain that they feel. Sometimes we need to even do that exercise to see how many jobs have been lost as a result of some of these policies. Because some of them are now being chased around by the banks because of the accumulation of interest and all. Because you have to deal with some other problems. So the point I'm making is that it's not as if it is bad to worry about stability. Stability is good, particularly if you don't have too much challenge with growth, you don't have too much challenge with employment. But if you have a serious problem with employment, which is what you are having now, then we should be talking about not just stability, we should be talking about moving growth forward.
Okay.
And to stimulate growth, businesses need liquidity. They need funds. Even though by injecting funds, you may pose some little risk to inflation, but that is tolerable in order to achieve the objective of job creation. So there has to be a balance in some of these policy choices. That is the point I'm making.
Well, Mr. Yusuf, some people will actually argue that last point with you about the fact that you need to put in liquidity, even though with the risk and everything to inflation. No, some people will argue with you, but we'll have the argument.
No, well, that is the way economics is. All of you, I mean, if you put 2-3 economists together, sometimes, most times they don't agree. Yeah. But our perspective is that we need to stimulate this economy. You cannot continue to have a situation where you have something like the peace of the graveyard. You have stability, but things are not happening. Things are happening more at the level of the big businesses. It's happening more at the level of maybe the traders. I mean, what values, how many jobs can you create at those levels?
Okay, so now we've highlighted these critical gaps that need to be fixed to be more inclusive and more impactful. The World Economic Forum Africa comes up next month in Abuja. What is the expectation of organized private sector?
Well, the World Economic Forum, from what I can see so far, is somehow very elitist, is somehow very restrictive, and I don't think it's meant for medium to small businesses.
I've had somebody on the program actually commented on
yes,
that. Why?
Because if you look at the way it is structured, even access to get registered is a very big issue. And I'm not sure that even the whole process, I'm not sure we have any serious local content, as it were, in the whole process. All these things, I think, is being done by those based in Switzerland or something. Well, so it's highly exclusive for the big businesses.
No, but you see, it's focused on Africa, which means that as much as possible, most of the participants that we're going to be seeing at the forum next month are going to be coming from the continent. Even if we're going to have foreign investors from other countries, the European countries and the rest of it coming in, but we're going to have majority of the participants being homegrown, home soil, mostly from African countries.
Let me share something with you. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce is a leading business association in this country. I have made efforts to even get some of our officers registered for this forum. It has not worked out. I've spoken to some of the local organizers. It has not worked. So I began to ask myself that who is this forum for? In the Chamber of Commerce, of course, we have large businesses, but majority of our members are actually SMEs. Because the membership of the chamber reflects the general configuration of the economy itself. In this economy, just as elsewhere, majority of economic players are small businesses. And interestingly, the theme of the forum is creating jobs and inclusive growth. You cannot do this without the critical involvement of small businesses.
And so organized private sector is not...
We are not, there is no invitation. You made an effort to get registered. They are not replying your mails and so on. So I begin to wonder. But my conclusion is that the wealth is an exclusive forum. Exclusive basically for the very big businesses,
But
multinationals, conglomerates, maybe the banks and so on.
But then you know that the World Economic Forum always tries to encourage private partnership, public-private partnership. And, you know, based on what you're saying now, it seems as if that might not totally be achieved, at least in this context. But then we know that the private sector has an active role to play in terms of developing any economy. Now, going forward, and objectively so, would you say that the organized private sector will be suitably represented at this forum?
No, not at all. What I can say, you see, when you say public-private partnership, it will still take place. We have some big players, big corporate players in this economy.
From the private sector?
From the private, they will be there. They will be there. Actually, some of them are even members of the World Economic Forum by virtue of the size of their balance sheet, the kind of business they do. They will be there. You know, so that will still take place. The ministers of government will be there. But the point I'm making is that this economy is almost 95% driven by SMEs. There is no space for SMEs in that forum. Although when I spoke to some of the local organizers, the LOCs, I was told that there is going to be another platform for civil society, a different forum, you know, where you just put the civil society organizations in a room and begin to talk about the issues. Even the full information about that is not available yet.
And so LCCI is not particularly satisfied with that?
Well, certainly not. Because this thing is taking place in Nigeria, and we don't have enough involvement of Nigerian businesses across levels, across all cadres, then you begin to wonder who the thing is for. And we are talking of inclusiveness, we are talking of job creation. How much jobs can the big companies provide? They can't create more jobs. It is the small business that will create the jobs. It is the small businesses that will create inclusiveness. If they are not there, then you cannot be talking of jobs. You cannot be talking of inclusiveness.
Well, I'm very sure that this is going to come up in the course of conversations that are going to be holding at that forum, because we're going to have global leaders, industrialists, captains of industries there, talking about issues that, certainly affect how economies can grow, development, and all the rest of it. And so there's going to be sharing of ideas. Now, Nigeria is not in isolation with the kind of issues that it has right now. Some countries have actually experienced it and have managed to find their way out of the doldrums and find themselves in a bigger and brighter future. And so for these ideas, for some of these people who are going to be there, definitely they're going to come out with these ideas and share it. Isn't that enough, to allow SMEs or members of the real sector to begin to sit down and strategize on how best they can work with these ideas, even though they're not there? How best can they work with these ideas when eventually they do come out? Because you see, definitely a communique will be prepared, a document will be prepared, a report will be prepared as regards what ideas have actually come up at these discussions and will be shared. So would it be enough for those reports when it eventually comes out? Organized private sector should make themselves available to tap into this, to look at this report and tap into the ideas that have actually come up.
You see, my view of this forum is that it has more networking value than policy value. You are talking of ideas. We have more than enough ideas when it comes to the issues that affect SMEs, they create jobs and so on. I'm not saying that you cannot benefit from other ideas. We can. Whatever comes out, we'll look at it. But what I want you to know is that the issue of policy and how things will work is secondary. The main objective from what I can see is the networking value that it presents for the players. And it's for top-end businesses. It's not for even it's not even for large enterprise within our own context. There are some of them that will not even be qualified to go into that forum.
Well, Mr. Yusuf, I'm going to remind you about this sometime, I'm sure, in a not-too-distant future, after the forum has come and gone, that definitely policies and ideas that were actually put forward at the forum have actually been instrumental in the development and growth of the real sector.
Okay, we wait and see.
Okay, but thank you so much for coming on the program this morning. It's been an interesting conversation.
It's a pleasure.
Well, I've been speaking to the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we've been reviewing the LCCI's first quarter report of the economy, and of course, organized private sector stands as the World Economic Forum Africa approaches, which comes up next month, actually. And of course, that's the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Harriet Agbenyi. Bye-bye.